Well, all right. Smooth 98.1. We are in the 7 o'clock hour. Great time to be here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome to the Drive Time Discussions. So, you know the drill with this hour. We give you out the phone numbers. We tell you to follow us on our social media and comment and like and get into the conversation. We have a very special guest in the studio with us. But I will let Falad do the intros because we're not going to just roll them in, right? Let's give them a little bit of a little bit of an encomium.
All right. Okay. So, just before we give you the details of our social media platforms where you can engage with us this evening on Drive Time Discussions, we need to also let you know and have a little background on what we'll be talking about.
Go ahead.
It is investigative journalism.
Or lack thereof.
Dead or in Nigeria. The reason why we're asking this question or we're talking about this evening, this evening is because of several comments that we have come across. You know, whenever a story breaks or whenever something happens, maybe in politics, maybe human interests, story breaks, and then people begin to say that, oh, Nigerian journalists could do this, they should have been doing this, they should have been digging, they should have been...
Little do they know.
Nigerian journalists don't know their jobs anymore, and this and that. And so, yes, we do know that a free, open, of course, bold media is part of the core of democracy in any part of the world, and especially in the world that we're living in today, investigative journalism is definitely a part of our daily lives. Yeah. And unfortunately, we live in a society where there are constraints that most people do not know about, and that's what we want to talk about this evening. Is it really dead? Are there people really investigating, incidents and reports and putting out stories and nobody is paying attention, or we are paying attention but we do not see the risk that they're putting themselves through? And so we have our guest this evening. He's a freelance journalist. He's written stories for CNN Africa, The Guardian, and Premium Times, all these other platforms, and he's broken his share of investigative pieces. Well, his name is David. This is where I stumble because
Is it Yoruba or a broad name?
It's Igun.
Okay.
Ogu, yeah,
how do you pronounce Hundein?
Hundein. Yeah.
This is the first pronunciation Fala has not gotten right. I think we need to record this in folklore. But
welcome, David.
Welcome. Yes, very special welcome to you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get in on the conversation. 0809 444-0981. That's the number you can send us a message on. Of course, we're on Twitter and all social media at Smooth981FM. We're talking, is investigative journalism really dead in Nigeria? With so many incidents happened last year. I used to work for an investigative journalism newspaper that no longer exists. Do we even have newspapers?
Yes, we do. Like Premium Times. Premium Times even they have a center for investigative journalism, and they are always they're always breaking stories. Over and I think for now they're about, and I think Newswire.
Yeah.
Premium Times and Newswire, for me personally, those are the platforms where I know that, okay, I can always get those kind of stories.
Because I came in on the next newspaper, 234 Next. And that was a very quick shutdown.
Yes, it was.
We know what happens. Those from the inside know exactly how it happened. And anyways, David is here. Yeah. And you're getting a lot of messages anyways.
Even before we start the conversation.
So Tunji is saying hi.
Hi, Tunji.
Yeah.
So, when you're investigating a story, it can be a deadly affair. You can make
uncovering secrets of the rich and powerful in any society is a deadly affair.
Particularly in Nigeria.
What has been your experience?
So far, I would say I haven't. No one has pointed a gun on my head yet.
Praise God.
Touch wood. Yeah. Hopefully we keep it that way.
Yeah.
But what I will say though is that there have been a lot of attempts at intimidating not just myself, but also the platforms that I work with. So, for example, Newswire, I think in the past month alone, Newswire, I think, has received at least 4 legal notices.
Considering that Newswire is a relatively new platform, I think, right?
Well, but the thing is,
they're digging up a lot of dirt.
So, the saying that goes, what what someone doesn't want printed is journalism, and everything else
is
It's
public
PR.
relations. So in Nigeria, the memo doesn't seem to have gone around that actually when I write something that you didn't want me to write, when I write something you don't like, that doesn't mean I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
It just means you didn't like it.
Yeah.
I haven't broken any law. So that basic respect for the principle of journalism hasn't really translated into our popular culture here yet. I don't think.
Kind of goes against our culture. You can't tell someone that they're wrong. You can't tell someone older or more
maybe that's
powerful
part of
than
it.
you.
Maybe that's also
down.
maybe that's also a holdout from the military era. Maybe we don't really understand what it means to live in a democracy yet. Maybe we equate democracy to just having elections.
Maybe we don't even know what the benefit of having good journalism is, like seeing the results of things being uncovered and having actions put towards making things better. We haven't seen that full 360. I don't think certain generations have. So even to conceptualize how each piece works, it can be quite foreign to individuals who have never seen the whole of it work and say, it can't happen. This is Nigeria.
The fun thing about that is, again, this is where I think a proper understanding of history would help.
Okay.
Because if you go into our history as a country, the most significant step on the road to gaining independence from the British was the establishment of an indigenous newspaper. Exactly. That was actually the most significant step, because with that, and the purpose of that newspaper was actually to do investigative journalism. That hey, this is what the colonial government does, which normally doesn't get put out there, but we are putting it out there, and we are telling a story to the people that these are the things that are happening. This is unacceptable, and we need to find another way of doing things. Maybe that's going to be by getting rid of the British. I don't know, and that's pretty much that's actually a big part of our history. But we don't seem to understand that. We seem to think that we seem to sort of otherize journalists. We seem to just think of them as this, irritation. Yeah, this irritant. These people who just want to.
We're gonna take a really quick break. We got to take a pause on that. Take a really quick break here. We're gonna come back with Falah's thoughts on that. You all out there, you got some thoughts on journalism, investigative journalism in Nigeria, whether or not it's dead? Please send in messages. 0809 444 0981. We have David Hunde.
Hunde.
Close enough.
But yeah, feel free.
Yes.
I just call you David.
Yeah, we have David in the studio with Falah and myself. We will be right back after these messages. David Hunde in the studio with us, investigative journalist who wants all the smoke. It seems
he wants all the smoke.
0809 444 0981. Just before we took a break, I was about to get into a discussion. We're talking about investigative journalism really being dead in Nigeria. What your thoughts are on it? 0809 444 0981. Contribute. Send us a message. All right, Falah.
Yes, and just before I get into my thought, please don't forget you can tweet at Smooth981FM. # is Drive Time Discussions. So I found it interesting that you talked about, democracies across the world, and how that, maybe for us here, we haven't really gotten the hang of it, and we don't know how important it is, that we have, some form
feedback
of
exactly.
Investigative reports, at the core of our democracy. But I would like to say that even in, let me say, the democracies of the world that we lift up as examples. I mean, we can see what's happening in the US right now with the fact that journalism seems to be going down the toilet. And we also have, I think, an administration there that is committed to just discrediting everything that comes from CNN.
Is journalism going down the toilet?
No, they're
no. I think that they're
really
doing their job, but to a certain degree, there's also, it's become so polarized that you now have a media that, on one hand is trying really hard to, fact check everything, every sentence, make sure that people get to know, and on the other hand, you also have the ones who are totally doing the exact opposite, and you seem to wonder, like, when did everything become this rowdy, this like a battlefield? So here we are in Nigeria, and we're also a democracy, and we're looking up to their democracy, but here we are. It seems like our own issues are totally different.
Yes.
We're not used to checks and balances. Any kind of check and balanced situation, just it's hard for us to do. So I guess my question is it even possible to make investigative journalism pick back up? Or
that's what some of us are trying to find out.
Yeah.
Or are you guys getting scared?
So
fearful for your
yes and
livelihood?
No. Yes and no. So yes, in the sense that obviously nobody wants to end up with a bullet in their head.
Hey, God forbid.
You know, and you know this is a third world country. Things like that, you know, have been known to happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't. But on the other hand, there's also the realization that as fatalistic as this might sound, everybody's going to die one day.
Of course.
And you kind of need something to live for. You can't just go through life living on your knees.
Yeah.
Most people say
So-
it's their kids and their family.
So, for example, last year when there was that issue of the AEPB, the rogue ministry in Abuja that was going
Yes.
around kidnapping women off the streets, and you know, everyone in the capital was living in fear. You know, is it me next? Is it my sister next? Is it my mother next? And everyone just kind of you know, occasionally will, you know, send out a tweet about it, but you know, obviously that's not doing anything. And I thought, do you know what? Why isn't anyone looking at the government and saying, hey, this is who is responsible?
Yeah.
And this is
Clearly
what is
there's
happening.
an agency that is
Exactly.
responsible for
You
that.
have an
So-
issue with checks and balances.
So that was what I tried to do when I did that investigation. So I didn't just want to just do a story and say, hey, this is what is happening.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point a finger, like this is who is responsible. This is the person's name. You know, this is a picture. This is the devil.
And
you know, in
we
this situation.
saw that report. We saw how it translated into a policy change,
Exactly,
right?
exactly, and that's the goal
Of every report.
Yeah, that's the goal. So whether it was that report, whether it was the Sex for Grades documentary that Kiki did, whether it was the prison documentary that Fisayo
Fisayo
did,
Shoyinbo.
yeah,
Or
that
the drugs
is exactly that is always the goal, to achieve a tangible result.
Which
To
brings
change
me to another thing, another angle to this. I want to talk about the patronage culture that we have, and
Brown
also,
envelope?
you know, the media ownership angle. So I think I remember back then they used to say in school that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. And so you have a lot of, I think the largest crop of media ownership in Nigeria, platform ownership, are people who are either linked to, you know, people in political power, or in some way, you know, have patrons in people from people in political authority. So how does that trickle down to the media practitioner who is employed by these platforms?
That is one of the biggest problems facing
Yeah,
not just investigative journalism, but journalism period.
journalism generally.
In Nigeria, the fact that there doesn't seem to be a business model for journalism in Nigeria that has transcended patronage.
Yeah,
So there always has to be, if it's not a political sponsor, a corporate sponsor, which by the way is just as bad.
Yes.
You know, because it's not only the politicians that do terrible things. The corporates arguably do even worse. You just don't hear about it
okay.
as much because, again, you know, they're paying for the adverts. So I'm going to tell you a story, and obviously I'm not going to name names.
Please don't.
Because we're live on air. So
Please.
it was Premium Times, I believe it was. It was Premium Times, and at the time, this was at the peak when they were breaking like a new investigation story almost like every couple of weeks. And there's a large Nigerian corporate, never going to mention the name on air, and they had a deal, like an advertising deal with this corporate, and I think it was 10 million naira.
Okay.
So the corporate pays the money, and then the very next week, a story is coming on about that corporate.
Oh dear.
And someone from the PR department calls up the Premium Times editor and is like, yeah, we're going to need to take that story down. And the editor says, come, take your money, please.
Oh, they return the money.
They return the
Wow.
entire amount. But that's the thing, that's because that's Premium Times. Premium Times can afford to do that.
Yeah.
What
How many
about
platforms can afford to do
that
that?
depend on that money
Exactly.
to
Some of their
survive?
salaries are actually being.
That is the
Exactly.
problem that we're
Brown
facing.
envelopes,
So which is
yeah.
why Newswire, for example, which is one of my favorite platforms to work with. It's a really tiny, nimble platform. It's run by a lady called Mercy Abang.
Yeah.
The model Newswire has is to be tiny and nimble. Newswire is very small. It's owned by one person.
And I think they work with a lot of freelancers.
Exactly. Exactly. So the costs are kept to a minimum. So if I tell you how much, like The work I do for Newswire is some of my favorite work that I do. But if I tell you how much I get paid for that work, you probably laugh at me, because trust me, I don't do it for the money. There's other work I do for the money, but not the investigative work, right? The idea behind that is to keep it as much as possible out of the control of people who seek to influence what can and cannot be written. So over the past couple of weeks, for example, the story that I did, I'm sure you all know what story I'm referring to.
Please, oh no.
So it was a story that I did, basically, it was on Newswire, and the title of the story was Deaths, Diarrhea, and Late Night Sackings, the inside story of an employee nightmare at UBA and Dangote. So it was basically an investigation into...
Wait, what was that title? You are...
that title is scary enough.
All the smoke.
The story was worse.
Death, diarrhea, and...
Late Night Sackings.
Okay.
So it was basically an investigation into a corporate culture at two of Nigeria's biggest corporates, where basically employees are treated like below animal level. And I thought this was absolutely horrendous. And so I did the story, and the story went up, and within 12 hours, it wasn't up to 12 hours, within 6 hours of the story going up, all manner of phone calls started coming in to myself, to the publisher, then they were telling her, we're going to need you to take the story down. Like, she was being told, like, outright, take the story down. Why? Take the story down. We don't like it.
Pulling up the story right now.
Then I got a call as well. Oh, so and so person wants to engage you, wants to meet you, want to clarify this, that, or the other. Yeah. This was 7 p.m. in the night.
Why are you meeting at 7 p.m. in the night?
Meet me at some place in Ikoyi.
Nah,
all the smoke.
Night,
You're about to be picked up.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you doing?
Obviously, I declined. And then I tweeted about it for my own personal, as my own personal insurance. And then I got an angry phone call. Why would you do that? Why are you mentioning our brand name on Twitter? Take that tweet down.
It's a lot of anger you must have to deal
exactly.
with. How do you deal, just as a human being, because you seem like a very amiable individual. You don't look like you have any major personality disorders, but I could be wrong. How does someone because this is a stressful job. You are going to get... more people are going to hate you than like you. This is another counterintuitive, like it's like firefighters. They see a fire, but they run to the fire. Most people are running away from it. So you two have that. How do you deal with it on a daily basis? How does your family deal with fear for your safety and your own mental health? Like, what's the state of your mental health? Because you have friends that are doing this too. You're all a part of a community. So
we are. And I may not necessarily be able to speak for all of us, but I can definitely speak for myself.
Okay.
How I'm able to deal with it is that from a really young age, I've been used to dealing with very high levels of stress.
Were you bad or something?
No, but I was raised in a religious cult. So I've lived a double life since I was like 3.
Okay, great.
So I've always had that ability to constantly maintain a level of duality. So, for example, people have noticed that on social media, for example, I'm very feisty, I'm very in your face. Yeah. But in real life, I'm the most relaxed person in the world.
You look real
I'm absolutely chilled out.
See, I told you, not that I think. Personality disorders that I can see.
It's incredible that you mentioned this particular story that you did about treatment of staff and all of that in Nigeria's corporate world. Now let's try to relate this to how this affects journalists and their ability to do investigative reporting. And one time I remember I got into an argument with somebody on social media, and this person basically just said, oh, Nigerian journalists are lazy. They're supposed to go to Sambisa and go and report. They're supposed to.
So who's going to fund that?
Exactly. That was my question. So who is going to pay? So you're sending somebody. Okay, so at the former place where I used to work, one of our staff, somebody in the newsroom, came up, to our GM and said, this was at the height of the Boko Haram crisis in the Northeast, and she volunteered, to go. She was going to take a flight to Abuja, and then from Abuja she was going to travel, to the Northeast by road, and she was going to do this brilliant, report, documentary and everything, and come back with it and everything. But at the end of the day, even though the company, somehow was agreeable to her going, the issue of life insurance came up. Like, if something happens to you, who covers this? So how many reporters have life insurance? How many of them have any kind of insurance from their,
Good question.
that will be sending them to such places? And then we
Putting me on the
expect,
spot,
and then we expect, these brilliant reports from all this conflict zone area, even if they're not going to a conflict
they're going to
area.
be safe in order to do
Yes,
their job.
if
So
they're going to
It's a human.
safety is a thing.
There's a reason why much of the really good coverage on the Northeast that you see comes from AFP,
of abroad,
Washington Post, because those are the people who actually pay for people to be embedded
in those
Nigerian
areas.
They give them
military.
trainings.
Exactly.
Bulletproof things are this
Exactly.
thick. Their helmets are like.
So
Yeah.
if you have time, you could go on YouTube and Google. I forget the name of the documentary now, but it's by Vice. It was a documentary done in it was done in 2015 about the 72nd Mobile Strike Force, which was the Nigerian military unit that degraded Boko Haram severely just before the 2015 elections.
Yeah.
So they actually had their reporter Kai, the white dude. He was embedded with that unit. He was in there, with bullet shells flying overhead. That it was really, that happened.
Okay.
So, and again, that's because it's Vice News. They can afford to. So obviously
They can afford to fund it.
Exactly. So obviously they've sent some representatives to the what's it called, the Nigerian Defense Headquarters.
Yes.
They've engaged them. They probably had to pay some money for it as well, and they say, hey, we want to cover this and we want to tell your story for you, because then the story going around was that, oh, the Nigerian military is not actually the ones degrading Boko Haram. It's a group of South African mercenaries.
What?
Yeah.
That was the story.
That was the story. So they had to come in and counter the narrative and show that
Exactly.
this is actually what the story is.
So, but these were the guys who were savvy enough to know that, oh, the Nigerian military needs this story to be told.
Yes.
And they actually had the resources to make it happen. And even the reporter as well, Kai is an ex-Navy SEAL.
So there's all kinds of
Exactly.
training that would need to take place
Already
before the
had.
job
Exactly.
even starts.
So it's not, yeah.
All right, Smooth 98.1 back here for a very interesting discussion we're having here on investigative journalism, or lack thereof, here in Nigeria. David is still here with Fala and myself, and we've gotten your messages.
Yeah.
Send some more in. Why don't you? 0809 444 0981. Before we get to what we were talking about just before we took a break, Kev sent in this message. He said, investigative journalism is kind of non-existent as journalists are threading with serious caution. Politicians will scare the heck out of you if you attempt. Investigate about a pastor now. His members will start raining curses on you.
Of course.
We all saw what
didn't
BBC did. We all saw what BBC did with our Randy lecturers. That's what I call investigative journalism. Do things really work in our very own Niger?
Good question. But before we get to that, I want us to look at some of the we've been outlining, or David has been helping us, throw some light on some of the reasons why it seems like investigative journalism in Nigeria is a little bit on the low key, or is struggling as compared to other crimes. And we've talked about ownership, we've talked about working conditions, we've talked about patronage, and what about corruption within the media organizations itself? Because I think that it's also a factor that we need to look at. Yes, we agree that because for the sake of survival, we have certain media platforms that will have to, because they depend on ad revenue, so they will have to dance to the tune of the corporates or government. Some people have their biggest ad revenue come from government patronage and all of that. So here we are. We also have situations where people are paid to not tell a story. People are paid to downplay certain stories. People are people are paid to kill stories. Some people even go out of their way. So I remember way back a few years ago, okay, not so few really, I used to work for a particular media organization, state-owned, not private-owned. And then I was the newsroom staff, so we would go out to do stories. And when you go And so you typically go with yourself and your cameraman, and of course a driver will be assigned to take you there. And when you do your interview and you come out, so everybody's expecting you to hand them stuff, because apparently they all have a cut. The driver has a cut, the camera guy has a cut, everybody has a cut. The producer, your editor, when you get to the studio, your editor has a cut.
You won't do anything unless you drop something.
So they won't even edit your story because you didn't drop cuts for them.
Yeah.
So when you go for a press conference, you go for whatever, that you say journalist. I've seen very embarrassing cases where journalists will start writing lists of names of people that came.
I think we all have.
So they can send it to the organizers and say, oh, this is so from that station. And they write all their station names, so all the envelopes can reach everybody. And then some places, they'll hang around until you give them thanks for coming.
Like begging, literally.
Yeah, like literal begging. So at this point, I'm concerned that, are we not shooting ourselves in the foot? If we're saying that, yes, we have all this censorship, we have all this constraints and impediments, but we ourselves as broadcast journalists, or as journalists generally, we also engage in these things. Where do we address this from?
So there are two things to pick apart in there. The first thing is, yes, to an extent, there is a measure of personal responsibility involved in these things.
Yeah.
If you claim to be a journalist, if you say that that's your profession, you are expected to respect your profession enough to not, make a spectacle of yourself in that manner.
Asking for things for coming.
I think we've all seen such things, and it's not.
You
it's
guys,
not nice
a lot
to
of
see.
their salaries are not being
That is
paid.
where that's where I was.
Okay, so
that's
because
where I was
I
going
didn't
to.
like the word
So-
disrespecting them, because it's not.
That's why I said, so there's a measure of personal responsibility involved, but I also happen to know that, especially in print in Nigeria, because print is
They're
print.
the worst.
I don't want to say it's a dying medium, but print is
It's a dying medium.
Print is suffering in Nigeria, right?
Because
Right.
it didn't evolve when other print
so-
medium across the world evolved.
I mean, a newspaper that I happen to know really well, the average employee there is being owed, if they're lucky, 4 months of wages. And these are not fantastic wages, by the way. This is an organization where entry-level salary is 35,000 naira a month. And you're going to be owed 4 months of wages for that. So the implication of that, if someone expects you to turn up to work every day for 4 months without getting paid, the unspoken implication of that is
Make your own money.
exactly go sell coverage, go get invited to events, and take the brown envelope. That's what your employer is indirectly asking you to do. And I have seen this personally. So on the other hand, you also have to see it from their point of view. However, I also do think that at a time when we have access to the internet, many journalists in Nigeria don't seem to quite understand the opportunities that exist therein. So in terms of making money, for example, I always say that the internet is like it's a treasure box. You could sit down literally in your house, right, with the skill set of a journalist, the writing skill sets, the research, especially skill set, the investigative skill set. You can make $3,000 a month easily in your house. You can, and I know because I have done it, and I still do it. So many of us still have this 1980s idea of what a job is, that you go to university, you study this thing called mass comm, which I'm so happy they've broken it up into its constituent programs now, because it was a nonsensical program, and I would know because I spent a year on the Nigerian mass comm program, and I
I spent 4
absolutely
years.
hated it.
Plus one.
So you spend 4 years there, you don't really learn much. They teach you basic, banal, out of date stuff.
Out of date info.
Like the program I was on, we weren't allowed to. So I had this was 2007, by the way. This wasn't the 80s.
Yeah.
There was already 3G internet in Nigeria and whatnot. So I didn't see the point of going to class with a notepad and a pen. I used to go with my laptop,
You're showing off.
and that got me in trouble.
Of course.
Because
In
you're
Nigerian
supposed to come.
university,
You're supposed to come
Pen
with
and
a
paper.
with
You're
this
playing games
with
on
this
this
long
thing. You're not serious.
with this long university notebook with a picture of someone with a graduating hat on it.
remember.
You're supposed to take down the guy's dictations and whatnot.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you could just sit there with your phone and record everything he's saying. So that was, and then you spend 4 years doing that. And you come out and you do your youth service. And you probably get posted to like the media house, and then after that you come in as an intern, and then you work your way up, eventually become editor. It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that anymore.
Really
From university, you can start practicing.
You can literally be a blogger at university and build a journalism career off that. You can literally,
up until recent times, mass communication departments didn't even have new media featured in their course outline. I checked.
Yes.
They didn't have it.
So these are the structural issues that creates that bad outcome that you see in terms of journalists running after that brown envelope and making a spectacle of themselves. It's not something I like seeing personally. Because I feel personally implicated in it as well, because that is my profession too. So I feel guilty by association whenever I see that. I don't feel like, oh, I'm better than these people. I feel like,
because when they talk about it, they talk about it like everybody.
Exactly.
All of you
and
journalists.
In fact, one of something I've been hearing a lot recently is, oh, you're doing really well. I hope you're not going to turn on us.
What do you mean? Start working for a politician?
Exactly.
Because that's the natural course.
I actually had someone
for
tweet
a journalist who is worth their salt in this country.
I actually had someone tweet at me that David Hunter seems to be doing a lot of great work recently. I hope he's not going to pull out a jury on us.
I think that people say that. I think that people say that because it looks. From history and from cases that we've seen, it looks like there's always a strategy. So we find someone who's very vocal, who's maybe who's
got
very
a large
loud,
following,
has a large following,
and then they co-opt them for the political purposes of someone.
Sometimes people don't even believe that they were co-opted. Sometimes people believe it's all a strategy. So make enough loud noise so they can see you, they can notice you, and then
which is definitely
people feel it's a strategy.
Which is definitely the case in some cases, and obviously
it is.
In some cases that I know of, that has been the strategy and it worked.
Oh, you're gonna have to tell us when we go to break. We're gonna take a really quick break. You all don't go anywhere. It's still the Smooth Drive time discussions. Things we know.
I know,
having been in this in this industry for so long, and also in either ways, 0809 444 0981. We're taking comments from you guys this evening.
Yes.
Oh no, we only have a few minutes. Time flies when we're having great discussions here. Got this message.
Just put your name and your location when you're sending messages so we can know exactly who you are. This person here says that the art is the backbone of the fourth estate. The about of journalism herself. The issue is not with the many who breathe down on the neck, but the few who do or say nothing. As to the person, even if one have nothing, doesn't mean he or she, to pick up or stay on a job that is less human and is important. My goodness. Please, do you mind editing this message and resending it so it can really sound...
The matter of the need to not settle for less or take whatever comes in the name of the available. It will only take a few seconds for one to be replaced in the end of death, worst case. But when you have it, you'll survive anywhere and you'll be a reference. True, I guess he's talking about the skills you need in order to be a good journalist. Once you have those skills, you're going to have them for life. They're going to be good for you to survive. But
you also need to be in an environment that allows you to
thrive,
practice,
to even
allows
work.
you to thrive.
Yep.
Because if we really look at all these things that we have outlined this evening, it feels like there's so many things that you have to fight against.
Yes.
So how does it work? How do we keep churning out the stories? How do we keep doing these reports? How do we move society forward?
So my solution is based on what has worked for me. This is not going to work for everyone.
Okay.
But this is my personal model, which, by the way, should not be mistaken for being a solution to the entire industry's problems. This is what journalists can do on an individual level. First of all, you need to find a way to monetize your own skills.
Okay.
Right? That might not necessarily be by writing stories for a media platform. That might be doing data entry online. It might be by doing research gigs for people online. You need to find a way to feed yourself comfortably, be comfortable.
Yes.
And then use the time and money you get from that to then, explore investigative stories. Because as it stands, you're not, as a Nigerian journalist who works exclusively with Nigerian media, you're really not going to do much for yourself. Even if you do get
financially, it's bleak.
You're going to be owed a lot, as I have been and still am, by the way. You know, that's how it goes. So you need to find a way to either plug your skill set into foreign platforms if they will take you on, or just do online gigs, find a way to make money, and then stay focused on what you're doing. So the entire idea behind that is that whoever can slap you with 50,000 naira is not going to own your mouth. There was something.
Don't be such a wretch that you can be turned with any small amount.
There was something my dad used to say that. So someone who is looking for what to eat, the person who will give that person 1,000 naira will become like God to that person.
True.
Yeah. So something he always drove into my mind was, no matter what, you know, even if you have to cut grass to feed yourself, make sure that you're never dependent on patronage.
Yeah, because patronage will shut you up.
Yeah, and it'll always steer you whatever side that they want you to go.
Exactly.
Farrago sent in this message and said, crowdfunding for investigative journalism. Any chance?
In Nigeria, so Premium Times is trying an interesting experiment. I'm waiting to see what the results of that are. So
what are they doing?
They if you go to any page on the Premium Times website story, at the bottom of the story, there's like a little appeal, a message, saying, you know, we need.
The Guardian UK does that.
Yeah, exactly. I think they copied that from the Guardian UK. So click here to donate as little as 1,000 naira, that sort of thing. I'm not convinced that Nigerians have that have that understanding of the need to be charitable yet. I'm not sure they get it, because
they have to see your face first and see how much you really want.
One thing I've heard a lot when this, because I raised this issue on Twitter some months back, where I said, hey, there's 2 million Nigerians on Twitter. If just 1% of that 2 million people would pay 1,000 naira monthly subscription
for
to
the
a Nigerian
Punch
platform.
It was when we were trying to,
and people were saying, oh, you know, that I don't see the value. Why should I pay? You know, that you have to show. And people don't really, they haven't understood that there's a link between a strong, independent, powerful media and a good country,
and a government that is doing what is.
They haven't made that link, that connection yet. So you know, they say, oh, you know, you've not showed us the value, and I'm like, no, I don't need to sell it to you like beans. It's you that needs to understand that this is for your own good.
All right, well, look at that, we have run out of time.
Yes, indeed we have. I wish we could continue this conversation. There's so many angles, you know, that I really would have loved to explore, but of course we can always have a part 2. David Hundain.
Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah, David, really good to have you in here.
Thank you so much for coming.
Take care of yourself. We're definitely going to be reading this death diary. I was actually reading it as we were talking, and I'm like, this guy.
No, you should follow David on social media. He's on Twitter at David Hundain, and he is in flames.
Yeah, well, more grease to your elbows. Stay safe. Come back soon. All you guys that sent messages, thank you so much. Fala and myself are going to be stepping out along with David.
Absolutely. And of course, you can catch a recap of the entire conversation on our YouTube channel later on. We'll tweet out the link on our Twitter handle, so you can go watch it in case you missed the early parts of the conversation.
Exactly. Thank you all for tuning in every day. We don't take it for granted. We love you. Mean it.
Bye.
Catch you tomorrow. Bye.